What is the basic unit of electrical quantity? Coulomb. When referencing resistance in a parallel DC circuit, which of the following statements is true? The total current is equal to the sum of the currents through the individual branches of the circuit. Transfer of electrical energy from one circuit to another without the aid of electrical connections is called induction. What happens to the current in a voltage step-up transformer with a ratio of 1 to 4? The current is stepped down by a 1 to 4 ratio. Which of these will cause the resistance of a conductor to decrease? Decrease the length or increase the cross-sectional area? Through which material will magnetic lines of force pass the most readily?
Iron.
A thermal switch, as used in an electrical motor, is designated to open the circuit in order to allow cooling of the motor. What two devices prevent a change in direction of current flow in a current under fault conditions? Cutout relay and reverse current circuit breaker. Batteries of different voltage but similar capacities can be connected in series with each other across the charger and charge using the constant current method. Batteries of different ampere-hour capacity and same voltage can be connected in parallel with each other across the charger and charged using the constant voltage method.
1 and 2 are true, 3 is not.
The method used to rapidly charge a nickel-cadmium battery utilizes constant voltage and varying current. The end-of-charge voltage of a nickel-cadmium battery while still on charge depends upon its temperature and the method used for charging. Nickel-cadmium and batteries' a rise in cell temperature causes a decrease in internal resistance. Which of the following best describes the contributing factors to thermal runaway in a nickel-cadmium battery installed in an aircraft? Low internal resistance intensified by high cell temperature and a high current discharge rate in a constant potential voltage charging system. What type of line is normally used in a drawing or blueprint that indicates invisible edges or contours? Medium weight short dashes evenly spaced. Schematic diagrams indicate the location of components with respect to each other within the system.
Only number 2 is true.
On occasion, a mechanic may need to make a simple sketch of a proposed repair to an aircraft, a new design, or a modification.
Only number 2 is true.
And what type of electrical diagram are images of components used instead of conventional electrical symbols? A picture diagram. The useful load of an aircraft consists of crew, unusable fuel, passengers, and cargo. In the theory of weight and balance, what is the name of the distance from the fulcrum to an object? Lever arm. Which would have an effect on an aircraft CG results when conducting a weight and balance check? Leaving the down locks installed. Which of the following is an example of a Class B lever? Wheelbarrow. To obtain useful weight data for purpose of determining the CG, it is necessary that an aircraft be weighed in a level flight altitude. The maximum weight of an aircraft is the empty weight plus useful load. Maximum zero fuel weight is the maximum permissible weight of a loaded aircraft, passenger, crew, and cargo, without fuel. The empty weight of an airplane is determined by subtracting the tar weight from the scale reading and adding the weight of each weighing point. Most modern aircraft are designed so that if all seats are occupied, full baggage is carried, and all fuel tanks are full, what will be the weight condition of the aircraft? It will be in excess of max takeoff weight. The useful load of an aircraft is the difference between the maximum takeoff weight and basic empty weight. Improper loading of a helicopter which results in excessive forward or aft CG limits is hazardous due to the reduction or loss of effective cycle pitch control. The center of gravity range in a single rotor helicopter is more restricted than for airplanes. All other things being equal, if an item of useful load located after an aircraft's center of gravity is removed, the aircraft's CG change will be forward in proportion to the weight of the item and its location in the aircraft. When making a rear weight and balance check to determine that the center of gravity will not exceed the rearward limit during extreme conditions, the items of useful load which should be computed at their maximum weights are those located forward of the rearward CG limit. When computing the maximum forward loaded CG of an aircraft, minimum weight, arms, and moments should be used for items of useful load that are located aft of the forward CG limit. Rolling type flaring tools are used to flare soft copper, aluminum, and brass tubing. Order of making a single flare on a piece of tubing. First, slip the fitting nut and sleeve on the tube. Second, place the tube in the proper size hole in the flaring block. Third, center the plunger or flaring pen over the tube. Fourth, project the end of the tube slightly from the top of the flaring tool, about the thickness of a dime. Fifth, tighten the clamp bar securely to prevent slippage. Lastly, strike the plunger several light blows with a lightweight hammer or mallet and turn the plunger 1/2 turn after each blow. Which of the following statements are correct in reference to flare tube fittings? And fittings have an identifying shoulder between the end of the threads and the flare cone.
Only statement 1 is correct.
In most aircraft hydraulic systems, two-piece tube connectors, consisting of a sleeve and a nut, are used when a tubing flare is required. The use of this type connector eliminates the possibility of reducing the flare thickness by wiping or ironing during the tightening process. Which statement about military standard MS flareless fittings is correct? During installation, MS flareless fittings are normally tightened by turning the nut a specific amount, rather than being torqued.
Only number 1 is correct. Number 2 and 3 are not correct.
Which of the following statements is correct in reference to flare fittings? And fitting have an identifying shoulder between the ends of the threads and the flare cone.
Only number 1 is correct. 2 and 3 are not correct.
The minimum bend radius for steel is greater than for aluminum. Bernoulli's principle: the pressure of a fluid decreases at points where the velocity of the fluid increases. Which non-destructive testing method is suitable for the inspection of most metals, plastics, and ceramics? Ultrasonic inspection. Scratches or NICs on the straight portion of aluminum alloy tubing may be repaired if there are no deeper than 10% of the wall thickness. Dents in straight sections of metal lines that are 20% of the tube diameter are not acceptable defects. Which of the following defects are not acceptable for metal lines? Cracked flare, seams, dents in the heel of a bend, less than 20% of the diameter, dents in the straight section that are 20% of tube diameter.
Those for items are correct. The other item does not apply.
What non-destructive testing method requires a little or no part preparation, is used to detect surface or near-surface defects in most, and may also be used to separate metals or alloys and their heat treat conditions? Eddy current. Which of the following materials may be inspected using the magnetic particle inspection method?
Only iron alloys.
It is considered good practice to normalize a part after welding to relieve internal stresses developed within the base metal. Leftover weld is called leg. When a part has cooled too quickly after being welded, there will appear cracks adjacent to the weld. One characteristic of a good weld is that no oxide should be formed on the base metal at a distance from the weld of more than 1/2 inch. And examining and evaluating a weld joint, a mechanic should be familiar with likely ambient exposure conditions and intended use of the part, along with type of weld and original part material composition. Fillet weld. The penetration requirement includes 25 to 50% penetration of the base metal thickness. A dial indicator is used to measure the alignment of a rotor shaft or the plane of rotation of a disc. Dividers do not provide a reading when used as a measuring device. If a radial engine has been shut down for more than 30 minutes, the propeller should be rotated through at least 2 revolutions to check for hydraulic lock. How is a flooded engine, equipped with a float-type carburetor, cleaned of excessive fuel? Crank the engine with the starter or by hand, with a mixture control and cut off, ignition switch off, and the throttle fully open, until the fuel charge has been cleared. Jet fuel is of a higher viscosity than aviation gasoline and therefore holds contaminants better.
Only number 1 is true.
Weather vanning tendency is greater when taxiing a tailwheel-type airplane in a direct crosswind. Why is ethylene dibromide added to aviation gasoline? To scavenge lead oxide from the cylinder combustion chambers. Most anodic. Magnesium. Most cathodic. Stainless steel. The total piston displacement in a reciprocating engine is the volume displaced by all the pistons during one revolution of the crankshaft.